Okay, there are very many ways on how to cut a trouser stroke a pant, and the method that I'm going to show you in this video is one of the ways. Okay. Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen from wherever you're watching from. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, as per these requests, I'm going to share with you one of the easiest way on how to draft a male pant stroke trouser step by step. Just watch this video up to the end. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us jump straight to our pant stroke trouser pattern drafting class. I draw this one vertical grain line and also this horizontal line on top of my working pattern paper. Then I label this point A, which will be the starting point for most of my calculated body measurements. Next is to determine other horizontal lines that are needed in my trouser pattern drafting project. I will start by determining my trouser full length or the hemline. So, from starting point A, minus 1.5 inches for the waistband, I measure continuous downwards trouser full length 42 inches. I mark 42 inches here. After, I square across a straight line. Still at the trouser hemline, I mark downwards 3 inches trouser hem allowance. Then I square across a straight hem allowance line like this. Next is to determine my crotch line height. There are many formulas for determining the crotch line. One of the methods is you get out seam minus in seam, giving you the crotch. Another method is minus measurements of the waistband. You get hip measurements divided by 4 plus 1, giving you the crotch. Another one is from starting point A, you measure downwards hip measurements divided by 4, giving you the crotch. Another method is you tell your client to sit straight, then measure waist to the base of the seat. The last one is measure across from the front waist to the back waist. So choose one that you see. So ladies and gentlemen, choose one that you see is comfortable for you. As for me, in this video, I'll go with hip measurements divided by 4 plus 1. So from starting point A, I minus 1.5 inches for the waistband. I measure downwards. My hip 43 plus 2 inches is allowance, giving me 45. I divide by 4, giving me 11.25 inches. So here is my 11.25 inches plus 1 inch. After, I square across a straight crotch depth line. Next is to determine knee height line. I measure this distance from the crotch to the hemline. I divide by 2 to get the midpoint. Then, from this midpoint, I mark upwards 1.5 inches for knee line position. After, I square across a straight line like this. Next is to determine hip line position. From the crotch From the crotch line, I mark upwards the exact round hip measurements, which is 43. I divide by 12, giving me 3.5 inches, but I'll just customize it to 3.5 inches. So I mark 3.5 inches here. Then I square across a straight line. So, ladies and gentlemen, all my 6 horizontal lines that are needed in this trouser drafting project are ready. Next is to insert my calculated trouser body measurements to these lines accordingly. First is to work on the crotch line. From this grain line, I measure inwards hip measurements 43 plus 2 is allowance, giving me 45, divide by 4, giving me 11.25 inches. So I mark 11.25 inches here. After, I square up a crotch rise line. Next is to determine the crotch extension. I get this distance, which is 11.25 inches. I divide by 4, giving me 2.8 inches. So from this point, I mark outwards 2.8 inches here. After, the next thing is to determine my trouser middle grain line. I measure this distance, I divide by 2 to get the midpoint. So here is my midpoint. Then at this midpoint, I square up and down a straight line like this. Then the next thing is to insert waist measurements at the waistline. When I'm drafting a female pant, I always begin inserting waist measurements from this side. But since I'm working on a male pant, I will start inserting waist measurements from this side. So I begin by shaping the waist. From starting point A, I mark inwards 0.5 inches for shaping. Now, this 0.5 inch point is my starting point for inserting most of my calculated waist measurements. From this 0.5 inch point, I measure inwards waist measurements 36 divided by 4, giving me 9 inches. So here is my 9 inches plus 1 inch for single pleat at the front. After, I connect this point to this point to create my new crotch rise line. Next is to determine the crotch curve line. I come to this grain line. At this point, I mark downwards the exact hip measurements 43 divided by 12, giving me 3.58 inches for the position of my thigh. After, I draw a diagonal straight line like this. Still at this side position, I measure diagonally upwards hip measurements divided by 6. My hip measurement is 43 divided by 6, giving me 7.1 inches. So I mark 7.1 inches here. Now, using my curved ruler, I connect these points together in a curved way to create crotch curved line. I'm done with the crotch area. Next is to insert calculated knee measurements at the knee line. At this point of middle line, I mark this side knee measurements divided by 4. My round knee is 18.5 inches. I divide by 4, giving me 4.625 inches. Also, this side I mark 4.625 inches. Also, I come to the hemline. I insert trouser bottom opening. At this middle line point, I mark this side bottom opening divide by 4. My bottom opening is 15 inches divided by 4, giving me 3.75 inches. So this side I mark 3.75 inches. Also this side I mark 3.75 inches. After, I now connect these points together to create trouser leg shaping. This blue line is not part of my working lines. At this point, I mark 2 inches. Okay. Next is to insert hip side pocket. At this point, I mark inwards 2 inches. Then from this 2-inch point, I slant my pocket height by 6.25 inches. Then I draw a broken straight line like this. Ladies and gentlemen, this straight line is just a guide, but you can go ahead and create any pocket design as long as you know where the pocket height is. Okay, we are done with the pocket area. Next is to mark the position of the pleat. The 1 inch we added for the pleat, I shift it to this line. So from this waistline, I mark downwards pleat height 1.75 inches. Now I'm done with the pleat area. Next is to shape my trouser pattern from the front. I come here at the crotch line rise. I mark downwards 0.5 inches. Guys, this shaping enables your trouser to sit relaxed at the front without popping the behind. Okay, then I draw my new shaped waistline like this. After, I mark 0.5 inches seam allowance at the waistline for the joining of my trouser pattern block to the waistband. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are done with the front drafting. The last thing is to trim off this front pattern. Don't forget to add seam allowance of 0.5 inches at the crotch rise and the curve area. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are done with the front. Next is to draft the back. I get a new pattern paper, I lay and pin the front like this. Then I trim off this side. I can now continue inserting measurements to the back. At this point, I mark 1.5 inches upwards. Then at this 1.5 inch point, I slant a straight line like this. After, I insert waist measurements to this line. From this point, I measure waist measurements 36 divided by 4, giving me 9 inches. So here is my 9 inches plus 1 inch that allowance plus 1.5 inch for seam allowances. After I come to the crotch line, I mark downwards 0.5 inches for new crotch at the back. What I have here, at this point I extend my back crotch by 2.8 inches. After I create this back crotch rise like this. Next is to add allowances to the knee and the hem. At the knee, I mark 2 inches. At the hem, I mark 2 inches. Then I connect these points together to create a back leg seam line. At the waistline, I mark 0.5 inches seam allowance. Ladies and gentlemen, we are done with the drafting the back. Next is to trim off the excess from the back pattern. Now, here is my both front and the back. I go ahead to unpin and separate the front from the back. Next is to insert the dart to the back. I measure this distance, I divide by 2 to get the midpoint. Then I mark downwards 3.5 inches for dart length. Still at this midpoint, I mark dart intake of 0.5 inches on this side, also 0.5 inches this side. After, I connect these points like this to create dart legs. Next is to insert the back welt pocket. On this side, I mark downwards 3 inches for the position of welt pocket. Also this side, I mark 3.5 inches. After, I square a straight line like this. Pocket width is of 5.75 inches. Using this as a center point for my pocket, I mark 2.875 inches here, Also this side I marked 2.875 inches. I marked 0.5 inch welt pocket height. Ladies and gentlemen, we are done with the pocket area. Next is to trim this excess at the waistline. Okay, our back pattern is ready. So guys, here are our two pattern blocks, front and the back. Next is to mark out the zipper fly and the zipper shield. Okay.